What's going on? Happy Wednesday, y'all. Happy Wisdom Wednesday. I'm super excited for today because I have a special treat. Now, typically, we talk to folks who are on their journey. They're leaving corporate America and going into entrepreneurship, or they've already left corporate America and they're in entrepreneurship already. But this conversation is going to be really near and dear to my heart because it really ties in a lot of my own personal career journey. And I'm also aligned to a bunch make our transition. So I'm gonna bring my guest in here, see how this works. Let's see. What's going on, dear?
Hello, how are you? Thanks for
I'm
having me.
wonderful. What's going on? Hey, Tiffany, how are you? Come on in. So, welcome to Wisdom Wednesday. How are you?
I'm good, excited to be here. Obviously, I love your channel. I love everything about it. And we've been following each other on Instagram for so long, so I'm glad we're doing this and collaborating. It's actually my first
Yes.
time joining someone else's live. I've done a couple, but this is my first time, so I was like, oh my God, make sure I know how to do this.
Listen, well, this is going to be super duper like smooth. First of all, before you introduce yourself, I just want to let everyone know like the power of connecting is really insane because when I started my like social media journey and like, creating my professional persona and figuring out who was going to be a part of my community and how was I going to find more people who were like me, I really started with like hashtags. And I think I found you because I was like looking for analysts who also like had a background in like data analytics and business and corporate. And I found your profile. I was like, oh, this chick looks cool because you got the like, you got the profile picture that's super hot. I was like, I love that. She seems like a cool chick. Started following you, and ever since I've just been watching you do your thing. So, without further ado, if you would introduce yourself to the folks, we can go ahead and get into the conversation.
Yeah, I'm Pradeepa. I am a associate at Thrasio, which is an e-commerce startup. I used to be an investment banking analyst at JP Morgan for around 2 years, and I just recently made the switch around 3 months ago. So it's been going great, going from banking to startup, and pretty much I have a platform called Analyst to CEO, and on that I talk a lot about like investment banking tips, career transitioning tips, basically everything that I've gone through in my journey, I try to share. And hopefully someone benefits from it is the goal. And it's something I've been doing for about a year now. So,
Yes, and I would say you provide really good content and context around like being in a big box investment banking firm versus like the boutique firm. Like I'm thinking back to the last couple of videos that you put out, and you do really good interviews as well. One of the things that I really love about like connecting with you in this career space is that you are helping, you're still in your 9 to 5, right? So we're always
mhm.
talking about the transition in my world, and you're still there, but you are providing so much insight into like people's career journey and things like that. So I'm curious if we could start, well, to give you a little context, my journey to like of being a career coach started like when I first got my very first job because I was still doing like resumes for my friends, like, oh, Ariel, can you help me get a job in your company, that kind of stuff. And so
Mhm.
the passion for me for like career help and stuff started there. For you,
Right.
what was your journey to like start getting like interested in helping others figure out where they want to go?
Yeah, for sure. I have always wanted to put the knowledge that I have out there for everyone to learn about. And social media obviously is a powerful tool, and it's something that is the best way and the easiest way to get your message across. So even in college and things like that, I've always been the type to like help people with their resume and things like that. But when I was recruiting for investment banking, there was a lot I really didn't know, and a lot I wished I'd known, especially entering the world of finance. I don't think I even knew what an investment bank was as a freshman in college. So I knew that there was so much that people could benefit from just having someone on the inside, and just like the passion to help and like educate people. And I've had so many people come after I created this platform, ask me to review their resume, ask me to help them with investment banking tips, and that's exactly why I made this platform. So it's doing exactly what I wanted it to. So I'm happy about that.
I'm happy about that too. I'm happy about that too. Now, we're here on Wisdom Wednesday, right? And I believe that wisdom comes from anywhere. Like sometimes I get wisdom from my 2-year-old nephew, and then you could get, wisdom from your oldest grandma in the family. But a lot of times, we overlook the wisdom in our own like career journey and things that we've learned along the way. So just
Mhm.
to give you a little bit of a heads up on what we do on Wisdom Wednesday, we really get into like what we've learned in the journey, right?
Right.
Now, another thing that you talk about, and I'm curious to know like where your passion for like for change or impact is, because we have also talked about like your interest in like entrepreneurship. So like for you, if you can think back way when to you were like before you even started your career, what was it that you thought you were gonna be when you said, okay, when I grow up, I want to be this?
Um, I definitely always have been interested in business since I was in high school. I started a nonprofit organization called Westchester Youth Volunteers about 7, 8 years ago. And
Really?
through that, yeah, it's like a group with 30 kids, and we organize events all over the community, whether it's like food drives, Halloween candy donation drives to soldiers, working with children with disabilities. So events like that, coordinating it, um, organizing it, that's something I was super passionate about. And I knew like whatever I did in life, like I wanted to have an impact. But I also liked leadership a lot. So business seemed like a really good route for me. And it's something like social impact and combining entrepreneurship is still something I'm super passionate about and where I feel like my life is going towards.
Yeah. Now, I didn't know you started a nonprofit. So, like,
Yeah.
when did you get the inclination? Did you always grow up, like, like volunteering and things like that? Or when did you start getting exposed to volunteer work?
Yeah, so even in middle school and things like that, I was really close to a library near my house, and I would always go during the summer and teach kids how to read and pick out books and things like that. And it's something that, especially education, it made a lot of sense to me. I used to teach kids SAT prep classes or college readiness courses, like free workshops in the library. So combining every like volunteering service I had, I noticed that people want to help but they just don't know how to get involved or they don't want to be the one to make the relationship with an organization. And so bridging the gap between the two is like what my nonprofit was all about.
Bridging the gap between the organizations that offer the services and the people who want to help.
Yes, exactly.
So how long have you done that, and like where is it now?
So actually, I maintained it all through high school, college, and now my youngest brother, he's managing the entire thing, which is great because
Are you
he's a sophomore in high school. So we kind of kept passing it down. And then, of course, like if there's SAT prep classes and things like that that they need help with, I volunteer. But actually, now I'm a part of New York Cares, which is a larger version of the nonprofit I started. So it's in New York City where I am right now. So it was a way for me to get involved in the community that I'm currently in. And I'm a SAT tutor on every Wednesday usually, and or like I'm part of the junior board. So things like that is how I try to stay involved even today, and be part of the larger nonprofit community in New York.
That is amazing. One, I didn't know all of this was going to be uncovered, but that is super amazing. I have a huge heart for social entrepreneurship. I think we talked about that just a little bit,
Hmm.
but that's actually really cool. And the other cool thing about it is you were able to pass it down to your younger brother to keep the legacy going while you're in your career. So,
Exactly.
um,
Yeah.
that's the part that I'm kind of curious in. You were IB analyst at JP Morgan, right?
Right.
And you said now are you still an analyst, or
I'm
would
an
you say?
associate now at a startup called Thrasio. So basically, I help with, they're an e-commerce company and they acquire Amazon-based e-commerce companies mainly. So my job is basically to evaluate the business, talk to the seller, and decide what we should buy that company for. So very different from what I was doing in banking, where I was on the equity capital management side, market side. And we were on the teams where we would help companies go public or raise money for follow-ons. So I'm kind of getting to see all different types of aspects of business, which I really like.
Now, I have a couple of questions to ask you about the specifics of your job, and
Hmm.
promise you guys you want to stay here because I think you have great insight for a lot of young entrepreneurs. When I say young, I just mean young in the business. We could be 40 years old, but still be young entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm going to ask you some questions about that. But one of the things that I might have thought that I would have to sacrifice when I was in corporate America was giving back, that ability to give back. So now that you're in your full-time job and you have your brother who's running the nonprofit arm of things, where do you find like your energy or your ability to like give back in that way? And do you feel like you can do that more or less? How does that work for you?
100%. So when I was in banking, it was so hard for me to be able to maintain that giving back energy because I was working like 90 to 100 hours a week. So it was like I was trying to do what I can, but I was like, my priority at that time was doing well in my job, maintaining mental health. And it was also the pandemic. So I was trying to find things to give back towards, but it was hard because everything was virtual. Now, recently, I've been able to prioritize again giving back with SAT tutoring, being more involved in my nonprofit. My company Thrasio, like we aren't as involved in nonprofits yet, in the same way JP Morgan was super involved in the New York City community. So I was
Hmm.
actually able to introduce them to New York Cares, and we're choosing that organization for our holiday initiative. So it's a way for me to bridge the two worlds, right? So I think that's great, and it's already showing that like even in a smaller corporation, how much more impact I can have just in 3 months. So I do really like that.
That's good. That's good. I think that work-life balance is not always available to a lot of us.
Mhm.
But since you've pivoted to much more of a role that it's more flexible. And then on the back end, outside of our conversation, we talk about some of the opportunities that you have to build your own personal, like professional development
Right.
as an employee, and some of the things that your company is willing to invest in. So, we probably will hit on that too before we get out of here. But as it pertains to like the things that you've learned. It sounds like there's a lot that a young entrepreneur could really learn from when it comes to you guys evaluating companies, understanding like what needs to be in place for you guys to be even willing to
100%.
sell, what it takes for a company to build themselves up to a place where they're able to sell, like all that stuff. So when you think about entrepreneurs who are out here just willy-nilly building businesses and stuff, and then you see your job at a high level. You see companies being sold, and what would you give a dollar amount of like the companies that you see get bought and sold? Like, well, give a dollar amount of
It's
what you're
it's
working with.
crazy. Like some businesses are bought anywhere from like 10 million to like $50 million. And I really think, oh my God, I wish I'd come up with that. And like Thrasio buys any like consumer staples basically. It could be, a spatula company, it could be a stain remover company, it could be anything really. Like it could be knives, it could be like so all you need is a simple idea, and if it's successful on an e-commerce platform like Amazon, like your business could be worth a lot of money, which I didn't realize from an investment banking perspective, like because we were working with really large corporations who are either already public or about to go public, and their businesses were super complicated. And now
Yeah.
stepping back and working in e-commerce and evaluating businesses that relatively are a lot more simple, like I realize the power in like just having a product or some products, and people are willing to buy it for a lot of money.
So you did say products. Is there a difference between a product-based business being able to be sold and bought, or a service-based business, or do you see, or is it just in your lane that you see more product-based businesses being bought?
So I'm usually buying product-based businesses. I actually am not in like the service-based buying business as much, but especially with Thrasio, like it's all like e-commerce products. So
Right. So even if they did have a service arm of their business, the Thrasio is specifically focused on like if it's knives, if it's the things that you're talking about, like inventions. So
yeah.
that's pretty cool. I wonder if the steps, and maybe you know this at a high level, but what are the steps, first of all, that it takes for a person to be to get, like what if whatever they're valued at, like to get to become bought or sold? And then what do you think that would look like for service-based businesses?
That's a great question. I think with businesses that are already like kind of mature, having a proper income statement that's profitable, seeing like obviously growing revenues, growing market share in wherever you're selling your business, seeing like if the products are being well ranked on platforms. These are all important. It's so much easier to analyze a business when it has financials
Yeah.
versus, you know, venture capital where you're like valuating based on an idea. So
Yeah.
it's just so much more like we think go with our gut in VC, I feel like, because you don't, this company is just not even a company, it's just an idea, versus like in more mature e-commerce platform businesses, like these are companies where they have records of sales, they have profitability, they have, you know, like gross expenses and things like that. So it's so much
Mhm.
easier for us on our end to be like, okay, this is what they're making, this is where we think it's going to go based on past performances. With a
Mhm.
service-based business, it's like the skill might be like, for example, we can't buy you because you are the talent. So I feel like it's so different, right? Like we can take over and run a business that's an e-commerce business because we have tons of people on our end who know what they're doing too. But a
Mm.
service-based business, we need like the people. Not only are we buying it, we need to be able to run it. So I think it's a totally different valuation.
Oh, that's really interesting. So I'm thinking of, I usually speak in product and service-based businesses, but I'm thinking of something that's not tangible because we're in this world of content, right?
Hmm.
And people are creating platforms with a bunch of content. I'm thinking like own like the TV network. If they were, if a TV network or like even if a podcast, right? I guess we would look at that as like a like if the podcast platform, right? You know how podcast platforms have multiple different podcasts.
Hmm.
If they wanted to sell the business, like the overarching platform,
Right.
is that more of a boutique type of sales transaction, or would there be an entity that's willing to buy like a network or something like that?
I think there would be. It's just it depends on who's going to continue running the podcast after it's been bought, right? Like the whole business and the clientele are probably there because of whoever's running the podcast. So if it's being bought, like you would expect the owner to stay on because whoever's taking it over might not be able to deliver that same quality content.
Right. Oh, you're making me realize I'm so in the like the personality business that like it's almost making me think, what product do I need to create right now that will be sustainable and that I could actually sell outside of my personality?
Yeah, because like if it's you're growing yourself as a brand, like one day you can't sell your brand because like you are your brand. Versus if you made a product, one day you could sell the product and you are not that product. It's
Mm-hmm.
like I feel like it's so much easier for us to like take a knife company and run with it versus I can't take your podcast because we'd still need you.
This is good. This is really good. This is really good.
I hope it's
So,
making sense.
oh yes, absolutely. And guys, if it's not making sense, if you have questions, go ahead and put that in the chat. If you have specific questions about your business, I have a lot of service-based businesses in my community, and or like t-shirt business and things like that. I remember when I was still in corporate, and I thought when I became an entrepreneur, it would be like, or the way that I envision entrepreneurship is super product-based, like what you're talking about, like inventions and innovations and just things like apps and stuff, but I ended up being more of a in a service-based business, which is where I feel good. But it's just really like opening my mind up to longevity and
Right.
being able to like sell for $10 billion, right?
Hmm.
That's pretty cool. Now, you are extremely knowledgeable, and it reminds me of myself when I was like, I'm not trying to date you or anything, and I promise you, like, I respect 100% what you do. When I was younger in my career, one of the things that I would think about is I knew so much at a high level that I thought about my professional development in a way like, what else do I need to know as a person or as a
Hmm.
professional that would make me well-rounded? Because I'm young, but I was managing like millions of dollars on a revenue budget, and I had to take time to think about what do I want to how do I want to develop myself. Do you
Hmm.
have those conversations with yourself very often?
Oh yeah, all the time because like I'm very worried about getting very complacent in my career. Not that I would because I'm so type A, but like um every book you've read about career and professional development is all about like every move you make in your 20s is like 10 times more valuable than any move you'll make later on in life. So I'm
Yeah.
always sitting there like, what should I be doing? My dad is always like, oh, are you reading enough business books? Are you always doing this? Are you always doing? I'm like, Dad, come on, I know what I'm doing. But anyway, it's like you always think that you could be doing more. And it's more about like you don't want to just be doing anything. You want to do something that's targeted and helping you. So it's about finding that. I think just talking to people in your industry is super helpful to just open your eyes to different possibilities on what you could be doing. Another thing I feel like I need to, get and do more of is um, like, like you said, like I said, networking, and then also just um, planning ahead and thinking about like, okay, do I want to go to business school? Do I want to stay and continue growing where I am? Like, do I want to look at other opportunities? I think people shouldn't bucket themselves, like narrow themselves into one. There can obviously be multiple ways you go about your career, and they're all probably just as likely to lead you to success. But that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Yeah, yeah, that's actually really, really good. And your professional and personal development journey, reading books, that's probably, I wasn't an avid reader, when I was younger, but some of the books that really, really changed my life in corporate and then even transitioning into entrepreneurship, it's like Presence, which is by Amy Cuddy. It's a psychological book, and I can always share some of these with you, online and offline. But
Yeah.
other books that I think really helped me are like The Alchemist, which I don't know if there's an entrepreneur who's not read The Alchemist. Have you got a chance to read it?
It is on my list. So for me, there is a couple things that I've been told to read. Mainly though, I find if you're in banking or you're in the younger stages of your journey, if you're not reading any books, you should at least be reading the news. So that's something I try to definitely do. I'm subscribed to like Finimize, Morning Brew, Short Squeeze actually, I think by Liquidity, and they're all super helpful. Like I read it every day. It's in some ways helpful that some of them are a little bit repetitive so that like I don't just read it and forget. Like I'm like, oh yeah, this is what just I just read. And one comes in the morning, one comes at night. So I'm always at least up to date on that.
That's awesome. She's on it, guys. I mean, if you haven't already noticed, put the fire emojis in the chat because she's definitely on it. And I'm really, really like excited about the journey ahead because you've done so much preparation on the front end that whatever you do moving forward is going to literally like blossom. No matter what you do, whether you go the nonprofit route, social entrepreneurship route, entrepreneur route, innovation, like you have so much like background that you can kind of take it and spin it however you want. Now, when I think about some of our conversations, you're super knowledgeable in the corporate space, and I know you might give yourself a couple more years to learn what you need to learn in this
Mhm.
space before you transition. But like, what would you say? This is more like a familial question, right? Like, not every family supports entrepreneurs, right? So, when you think about like entrepreneurship in your journey, do you think, or how do you feel? Matter of fact, let me think about this. Are your family all entrepreneurs? Like what's your family background?
So, my dad's a mechanical engineer. My mom's a
Ooh.
stay-at-home mom. So, like, they came here in their 20s, to America. But interestingly, they're not like in entrepreneurial careers. But my grandmother, she and my grandpa started a marriage hall together. She was a life insurance agent. They owned a clothing store. So they're like very definition of entrepreneurial for me. So I've always felt like I had that in my family. And my parents, they've definitely encouraged me. They know that what I want to do one day is start something. Um, but it's interesting because coming from a more traditional perspective, they're like, play it safe sometimes. I got that advice. Like my dad was like, oh, JP Morgan, it's a bank, like everybody knows it. Are you sure you want to leave? So that was like an interesting conversation because he's been in the same company for the past 25 years. So there is that generational gap, but at the end of the day, they know like if you want to start something, you have to take risks. And they're definitely super supportive overall of the journey. So, but still sometimes in the beginning when I was like, oh, I'm going to be a business major, they're like, sure, you don't want to do computer science. But Yeah, I know that they're definitely on board overall.
That's dope. Yeah, the biggest thing, the biggest asset that you're going to have when you make your transition, the support network that you have, whether it's friends, whether it's colleagues, whether it's business partners, but family is the most important. Sometimes they're supportive and sometimes they're not. But the
Mhm.
cool thing about it is like to have an elder in your family who has had that experience. And you said she's still living with us?
My grandma, she's actually in India. They are running the marriage hall right there. It's something that they only opened like 3 years ago too. So it's like crazy that there's like, in their 70s and still like coming up with new things. They had an apartment complex that they built and owned for several years. So they're always inspiring me, honestly. And my grandpa's like the one thing he's always telling me every time I talk to him on the phone is like, I'm expecting you to take me on your private jet someday. That's like his favorite thing to tell me. So it is good. I'm getting support from all ages and generations of my family, which is really
Yeah, and perspectives and like just like all of the nitty gritty. So when you think about like I'm not sure how often you talk to your grandparents, but they would be like my source of all type, like you said, inspiration, but motivation and even insight into like what type of things they'd be good at and what type of things like they were good at, bad at, or I'd be good at. So when you think about like some of the wisdom or the feedback that you've gotten over the years, what would you say is the number one thing that kind of keeps you going on your journey?
actually like my biggest wisdom always comes from my mom because I tell her everything that stresses me out. So she's always like, everything is like not as big as it seems. And
Mm.
like you need to also be enjoying and appreciating everything you're doing at the moment. And then also she's a big like proponent of letting God handle a lot of like your stress and like kind of leaving it up to him. So honestly, like I believe that too. And like as much as but then at the same time, I'm like, God can only do so much if you're not trying on your end. So like also give it everything you've got to. So I think combining those two.
Girl, you better say that. Mixing your own wisdom in there. I say that all the time. So I'm big on affirmations. I'm big on prayer. I'm big on meditation.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times what people will say is like, you can't pray yourself to success. You can't pray or meditate your way to success. But
100%.
what you just said was that like taking action mixed with our belief in ourselves and our belief in God. That's what takes us up there.
Yeah. There's like a famous saying in Hinduism. It's called karm karo or fal ki chinta na karo. It's like basically like think do your duty, but don't worry about the results. Like don't worry about the fruit because that'll come on its own.
You're teaching me something right now, Pradeep. You're really teaching me something. I like
I'm,
it.
that's something that it's hard to implement because like of course you're going to be stressed about like what happens. You can't, it's like very like if you're really someone who does that, like you must be like on a really like high level because like I'm always thinking about the result, but it's something to like consciously try not to do.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. I'm thinking about as much as you've done in your lifetime, um, there may have also been like those like um hiccups or obstacles. And I'm thinking about when I was in college, and even when I graduated, like there are certain things that just shaped me and shaped my personality. When
Yeah.
I thought there was a lowest time in my life, for example, when I went to business school, I wanted to go into accounting first. And you have to take the placement test. And it broke me down because I realized accounting is not just about numbers. Like you have to
Right.
know the tax laws and things like that. So it broke me down. I cried my butt off, and it really like let me know that life is guiding me in the direction that I need to go. Because finance was so much better. I enjoyed it. I found later on that I would enjoy other things in life. So when
Mhm.
you think about the things that you've experienced in your lifetime, what are some of those, even one of those like devastating moments that you've learned from and that really shape you in a unique way?
Yeah, so the first one that comes to mind, when I first started my career, I was a credit risk analyst at JP Morgan. And I had done the internship the previous summer, got the return offer, chose to graduate early and start working there. But the first day I got there, I was told that the entire team was shifting to Texas within like 5, 6 months. So either I had to go to Texas or try to find something new. And I was like, how come no one bothered to tell us, while we were in college, because clearly this is something that the entire team had known about, but they were waiting until we already got there to let us know.
Hmm.
So it was like, I had to start thinking, like, even on day one of my first job, like, what should I be doing next? And like, I was kind of upset about that. And then COVID also hit. And the initial few months of COVID, it was super hard to find a new job. And then afterwards, jobs opened up. But like at that point, I felt like I was in like a really big time crunch. But then just in 6 months, I was like, honestly, this is a blessing in disguise because I want something that's more client facing. I want something that's a little bit more intense. And especially I wanted something that was credit risk was more like monitoring like 15, 20 companies and you had a portfolio and you'd constantly be doing financial analysis. But I wanted some like a deal based team that would constantly, get different companies, different clients, and new things would always be coming to me. So I recruited, honestly, I was like, it took over 40 interviews. Most of them were within JP Morgan itself. And that's when I switched into pure investment banking at ECM. So that the knowledge gained from that year that I was working at ECM was like honestly so beneficial and a big driver as to how I had so much content to share on analyst to CEO and just pushing me further in my career itself that it ended up working out. So I think everything does happen for a reason. But honestly, I was really stressed because who starts thinking about their second job on the first day of their first job, So, um, but everything that I'd learned at credit risk even was great. And I love the people obviously because like I'd worked with them in the summer before. I was super excited about coming back. And they were all so helpful in helping me find my next job too. Like every time I applied to something internal, my manager would write a note of support for me. So I really did build good relationships there as well.
Yeah. It sounds like for your the makings that you have, right? You've
Hmm.
gotten this wisdom from a familial standpoint. You have this really like self-starter and passionate side of like creating nonprofits under your belt. And you have this career, which a lot of people have that like cookie cut out first day looks like this, and then we go up the corporate ladder and everything's fine. But you were thrown a couple curveballs super early on in your career, which makes all of the sense why you want to provide insight to people on their career journey because you've experienced a couple different variations at a very young age.
Yeah, definitely. It's if you're thinking technically, it's like my third role in 2.5 years. So that's pretty crazy. But every role had a purpose and every role I gained something and still gaining something. So I'm really happy about it and I'm happy about where I am. So I think
Yeah.
that's what's important.
Yeah, it is important. Another thing that when it comes to your community like engagement bone, if you will, it really intrigues me because one of the things that drives me specifically is me being a part of the Black community
Hmm.
and being an African American. I'm always thinking about how I can support like other young Black kids in America who don't necessarily have the wherewithal. And then when I think about the Black diaspora, like people who are in the Caribbeans or in Africa, and they're also disadvantaged because they're African American. That's something that drives me from like an impact standpoint.
Yeah.
Um, and so when we're in like entrepreneurship, one of the things that we specifically focus on are our target, like our target audience. That's our customer. But
Hmm.
then I have a an audience or a core audience, if you will, or a target that I want to support from a community engagement standpoint. So for you, since you are of Indian heritage,
Hmm.
do you also have a specific passion to help a specific group of people, or have you necessarily honed in on a specific group of people that you really are passionate about?
100%. So for me, the main causes I really like to support is education, anything and everything doing to do with education, especially people who are underprivileged. And then, of course, I feel like I do have a responsibility to show representation to women and minority women in general. And so people I interview or I interview with, I try to be really conscious of picking people who I personally admire and that also deserve the representation that they do, because not every platform is accessible to everyone. So these are the two things I definitely try to keep in mind.
So women of color, and education.
Yes.
hmm
Yeah.
So then if we extrapolate where you are today to like where you see yourself in the future, what is some of the huge goals that like you see yourself really being an impact in when it comes to education or being a woman or both, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's great is that there have been people who have paved the way a lot more in the past like 10 years than, when I was even in like from high school to now. So many more people I'm noticing, especially maybe because of social media,
hmm
um, that are women of color creating businesses. So I think that's great. Um, and I obviously want to be one among them. So that is something in high terms is something I want for myself. I think another thing in terms of education is if I can create a community or a company that incorporates my passion for education, that would be great. Ideally, that would be like the best of both worlds. But if not, I would definitely try to support education in any way I can. Continuing to volunteer and be a tutor is something I'm passionate about. And I think one thing is that as much as someone could give time, like like as much as someone could give money, giving time is what really matters, in my opinion. So I don't want to be just someone who just always throwing money at causes. Like I want to feel like I'm putting the work into like making it better.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I ditto all of that, second all of that, especially when it comes to, well, finding a company that allows us to marry our passion, of course, right? But being able to keep that top of mind, always being able to do the work, not just
Yes.
write a check. That was literally the impetus of like me leaving my job because I wanted to find more of a better balance. And the company I was at didn't necessarily allow me to do that. In that process of me shifting, my identity was like affected, right? And it kind of goes back to how I found you because I'm looking for, when I became an entrepreneur, I'm looking for like other people who identify as analysts, right? But then also and you'll see this on my YouTube because I'm like analyst by trade, career coach by passion. So for me, being an analyst, it has a special place in my identity, right? Because it's the way I think, whether I like it or not. It's not a strength of mine, but it's definitely like I think in spreadsheets. I used to journal in like charts and stuff. So for
Wow.
you, you've actually specifically named your Instagram analyst to CEO, and as you evolve, analyst is always going to have a place in your heart, I'd imagine, right? So like
Right.
where does analyst like have a place in your identity? Like how does it show up for you? And then how do you see it showing up for you in a social impact capacity?
Yeah, I think with when I joined banking and investment banking and I wanted to be an analyst, it's a career path that is like everybody seeks in college, right? In especially in business programs, oh, I want to be an analyst. Like it's funny because I started off like that too without even knowing really like what that entails. So the whole point of the channel was, yeah, like how do you start off? What is an analyst? Like, and what do you use it to become, right? So for me, I used investment banking as a stepping stone to entrepreneurship. So I would say that investment banking analyst is like my start, but then definitely not anywhere close to where I'm going to end up. So that's why I named the channel like that.
I love it. Okay, so it's just acknowledging, like always paying homage to where you started, and then always giving yourself an idea of where you want to go and how that's going to
Right.
actually affect your.
Yeah, because
Okay.
now technically I'm not even an analyst. I'm an associate now. So hopefully
You're
we're
on
just
the
going to
path.
keep moving up, right? That's the goal.
You know what you should do from like this is a content idea,
My brother
but
said, yeah, are you going to say name it associate to CEO and then keep changing the title? Because that's what
you
he
know,
said. And I was like, I don't know if everyone's going to find that confusing or not. Okay. I'm sure your
no.
idea is better.
No, because what will happen if you continue to change your IG is that your following will always have to like figure out who you are
Right.
when you change. And I hate when people change their name. Change it one time and get it over it. But I changed my name a lot, so I can't talk. But that's not what I was gonna say. I think for a content idea, what will be dope is you start like you already vlog a little bit, right? But the journey, like, okay, so I'm envisioning, like, if we were doing a fundraiser and you would have like that little thermostat with like, and then you start filling it in red as you go up and up and up.
Yeah.
It's like Pradeepa's journey to CEO, right? And so every time, like, you can read, like, every time you do a vlog or every time do anything really, it's like, hey, I'm in the journey, and then it's like a little Pradeepa going up the mountain, like, to
Oh,
CEO.
that's so cute. I love that. That's adorable. I gotta I gotta see how I can come up with something like that. But I do
Well, go ahead.
like slowly filling in like the bar closer and closer. What's
Yeah,
interesting about that though is like I wouldn't say becoming a CEO is like something that you're consistently filling in. You're probably gonna backslide a little bit too, and then keep going. It'll be like a moving dial until you finally get to the end.
exactly. That's why a thermostat is not a good like depiction, because it's not a linear path.
Yeah.
But for you to like to be able to share your journey with us in whatever capacity that looks like, because then it connects one, the reason that you decided to make that your social media handle, but then it also gives us a storyline to follow,
Hmm.
that is you. So can you imagine the body of work that you can create in like 10 years? And it always kind of goes back to that analyst
Documented.
to CEO.
Yeah. I think that's what half of this is for myself, honestly. Like it's a little bit of a journal, like my Instagram page, like pictures or, things that mean something to me or whenever I share like a transition in my career. I think it's pretty interesting that like this page will be there 20 years from now, which is also something I'm conscious about. I'm like, whatever I say, people could look back on it and be like, Pradeepa, you said this, but I'm trying to be someone who doesn't like. That's why I'm very honest and like very thought out when I say things or share things. It's not something that when I say 50 years later they'll be like, oh, you said that, and I'll be like, yeah, I
Yeah.
did say that.
Listen, now I'm going to date myself, because I remember when we were doing all these professional development networks, and it was just becoming an idea that, hey, your social media follows you forever. You want to be mindful of what you put out there and your representative and blah, blah, blah. And it was literally always a debate. Like, why does my social media matter and all this and all that? But you got it. You literally got it. It's so awesome talking to you, and then kind of picking your brain and things like that. Like, I look forward to continuing to like grow with you and see how your journey to CEO, how it ebbs and flows looks. Anyway, I have one more question for you, because
Yes.
as you are in this space that you're currently in, you're helping other people like you, and even younger than you, navigate their career,
Hmm.
and even those who are right alongside you manage their transition. So if you were to think about like one word of advice for someone who, just based on some of the questions that you've gotten in the past since you started this platform, or things that you maybe haven't even shared just yet, what's that word of wisdom that you'd like to share for those of us and behind us who are making their career transitions?
um I would say network. Like that's something that I never did in college at all, and then I just applied to hundreds of jobs, and um, it worked out. But obviously, that's not the best and like brightest option. Be really like specific about who you talk to. Reach out, cast a wide net, but then also that wide net should be all people that you would be happy to engage with. And definitely shoot your shot. Like I was always like, oh, it's weird if I reach out on Instagram or not Instagram, LinkedIn or whatever. But people reach out to me and I always say yes. So I'm like, well, if I reached out to someone, why wouldn't they say yes to me? So that's something I would recommend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool people attract cool people. So if you're a cool person, then you can reach out to somebody else and they'll be cool too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, like we did. So thank you so much. I have really, really enjoyed like getting into your brain a little bit, picking your brain, getting some wisdom. And we saw a couple fire emojis in the chat, because you are literally killing the game. So I look forward to continuing to watch your journey flourish. And before we get up out of here, if there's someone who connects with your journey, they want to learn a little bit more about investment banking, about just your career journey in general, or how you can help them, what's one way that they can reach out to you and stay engaged?
They should definitely follow Analyst to CEO, and then of course if you just DM me and have any questions or you want to chat or you want to send me your resume, happy to take a look.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again. I'm gonna let you go for your Wednesday. I know you got a lot of stuff going on, but again,
No, thank
thank
you
you
though.
so
This
much.
was great. Of course, I love talking to you, and I also did a video. We talked earlier, and I'm gonna be putting out the video that we did on my page as well. So that's something everyone should look forward to. Hopefully next week.
Stay tuned.
Yes,
All
for
right,
sure.
Pradeepa.
All right, let me see if I know how to smoothly leave this thing.
No worries. I got you. Have a good one.
Okay, you too.